to the Light and Dark podcast. I'm your host, Sam Renfro. In this podcast, we'll explore what it means to be fully human, embracing all aspects of the human experience, the light and the dark. We'll discuss all things health and wellness, spirituality, and everything in between. And I'll share all of the impactful tools and lessons that I've learned on this planet so far. The light is within you. Can you feel it? Welcome back to the Light and Dark podcast. My name is Sam, and I am over the moon excited today for this episode. It's going to be so great. And yes, I just made an astrological pun because I have my beautiful friend Samantha Melitta here with me, and she is an astrologer. She has studied human design, tarot, Mayan wisdom, and probably a ton of other things that we're going to get into in the episode. We have a long history, but we've kind of just been watching each other from afar for a while. So, Sam, if you'd like to introduce yourself, however that feels right for you.
Thank you so much. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here, especially after now a decade of friendship and knowing each other and watching each other grow. So I'm very happy and excited to be here and talking about our journeys, because I think a lot of what we both are working on today and sharing and wanting to be in service to, we kind of had the seeds planted for that when we first met. So thank you for having me. Yes, I am an astrologer. I have been studying traditional and modern astrology since around 2014. I really got into the divination space and divinatory praxis when I was a teenager, starting with the tarot and oracle cards. And then from there, continuing in that space of cultivating intuition, cultivating my own inner mystic, tending to my life with ritual and connecting to the season. So my passion really is about how do we come back into sacred time and sacred cycles with the plants, with the planets, with the earth, in the ways that we can find balance, we find meaning, we find understanding and depth in our human lifetime, in our collective experience and the timeline of humanity, the timeline of our earth. And so there's so much that we can come back to from this modern world that has gotten disconnected and a little bit disjointed as we've developed with industry and with competition and with capital. So how do we come back into that sacred space and sacred time? And that's what I love to focus my work and my intention on and share with others.
Yeah, I love this kind of push and pull between this balance, I guess I would say, between the earth and the cosmos, right? It's like really looping in the energies of what's happening around us, how it's affecting us, and then bringing it back down into, like you mentioned, plant medicines and wisdom that's been ancient and been here on the earth for so long. And it's like, I often, and lately a lot, I've been thinking about this idea of kind of like the alchemist, but more the magician, of being able to really utilize all the tools at hand and say, okay, cool, I'm gonna now grab in my bag over here, I'm gonna like use this, and then I'm gonna use that. And you're kind of like, what's in my field of awareness, what's at disposable, like, or disposal, what can I use to really cultivate like the most optimal life for myself and everyone around me? And I think that you do that in a really beautiful way. Do
Thank
you
you.
have you found any like weird correlations between how that's tied in, like on both the earthly realm and also within the cosmos? Like, have you noticed that little kind of intertwining in your own life?
Absolutely. I think that I very much, having studied astrology now for some time, I resonate with that principle of as above, so below, and also the Tao, that what goes up must come down. So there are cycles that we are working within. And when I think about how the movement of the planets can just be so impactful in my own personal astrology for my natal chart and my life. I'm like, wow, that is incredible. And it makes you question in a healthy way that ultimate existential question we have of fate versus free will, and how much of our lives has this divine plan, and how much do we get to co-create, how much do we get to write it out at this moment. So an example of how I have seen the cosmos come into my chart I can give from this last year in particular. Right now we have Jupiter in exaltation in the sign of Cancer, and it's in a nice place in my chart right now. It's in my house of hopes and dreams. It's the house where Jupiter rejoices. So Jupiter likes to give gifts here. It likes to hang out in this environment. And I had clocked early on in the year that Venus was going to have a conjunction in Cancer with Jupiter in August. And so I thought to myself, like, I wonder what that's going to be. I wonder what that's going to be. And the very beginning of July, Venus met up with Uranus and Taurus. So Taurus is 2 signs before we get to Cancer. And literally on the day, to the day, I got a call that I was being invited onto a trip to Greece, which for me as an astrologer has been a huge dream of mine, because so much of our tradition today with astrology is connected to Greek mythology and the Greek scholars that really pushed forward what we have today and certain techniques and such. So I got a call on the Venus Uranus conjunction that I was being invited onto the trip, that someone had dropped out of this trip. So it was funded, which is very Jupiter Venus, like benefactors and like blessings and support. And then the trip happened during the Venus Jupiter conjunction in August. So I was in Greece for the conjunction on the island of Crete with a fellow astrologer from Portland who had moved there. And we're like swimming through this beautiful gorge and in the sun and feeling like Aphrodite herself. And it was just such a juicy moment of as above, so below, of like relishing in this cosmic conjunction that I had looked at and said, that's going to be a really nice conjunction. And then it manifested into my life in that way.
Wow. I like got chills when you were talking about that. It's just like those moments of magic that you not only like kind of have this idea of like whom like you're seeing it in the future. I think as an astrologer and even as an amateur astrologer that I'm now getting into, it's like I can see, wow, there might be something really potent that's going to happen in that moment, but you never know how it's going to play out. Like, and I was laughing in the beginning because I literally had that question written down about this idea between surrender and free will. And you just brought it up so naturally. And it's something that I've been wrestling with a lot in my own life. But yeah, it's just so inspiring to hear like, oh, cool. Like we get to play and leverage these moments. And at the same time, like I'm just here to surrender to be like, well, okay, like that's happening. And all I can do is know how to respond to it in like a really holistic way where I can learn to evolve and grow. And I think that's kind of why astrology comes in, because it's like we can know how to know ourselves deeper, like know our truth a little bit deeper and work with it. And at the same time, know that like I have the power in my hands to make a decision in the moment. And if it's quote unquote like the wrong decision, like life is just going to course correct us. And the astrology is probably just going to come back around and give us more opportunities to do that if we didn't figure it out the first time around. But yeah, it's so cool to see.
So true. There's definitely cycles to this. And when I am sharing with clients, I will say that you can't fully predict the exact moment of how something is going to happen, but we do have archetypal clues. So we know that this planet or this aspect, when these two planets come into relationship in this way, we can look back historically. Okay, how did this show up and manifest on a personal level in your personal transit or on a collective level? And that way we can go, okay, we have clues, but we're not going to fully know how this is going to manifest until the moment comes. And that is part of of our life journey. I think that divination and consulting the oracle has been around since time immemorial. It's been part of our human experience since the days where we were worshiping the goddess and the great mother. But also, I think we're using these tools to enhance our potential, our life cycle, understanding, acceptance, integration, equanimity. And it's not necessarily where we need to look forward into the future for a sense of control. And that's the line that you always have to toe when you're thinking about astrology, when you're thinking about divination. It's like, how is this a helpful tool versus starting to become a tool of control, or it's a tool that you're leaning into because you have a fear of the uncertainty and the unknown, which is part of our human experience, right? We come here to live in the unknown and the great mystery.
Yeah, and it's so important to mention because I found myself like from the moment that I was first given a tarot deck, like I pretty much decided like I'm going to do it the traditional way. I'm not going to go out and seek one. I'm going to wait until someone in my life like just hands me one, and if it's meant for me, it will come. And then, of course, I started to get to know it and I started to work with it. And this, I had pulled a couple oracle cards here and there, and like, but the only two times I was ever really introduced to the tarot was with you and with another friend. And by the way, the only person I've ever actually paid for a tarot session. And so it's just so funny. But I guess what I'm saying is from the moment that I got one, there was just like this inkling in me that wanted to know. And I wanted to use it as a way to prepare to see what's coming and to like have this all-encompassing control of my life so that I could like constantly go towards the highest path, right? And as someone, and you maybe could probably even see this in my chart, as someone who has a hard time making decisions, it's like I wanted to lean on it so bad so that I didn't have to make the decision for myself. And, of course, and I would ask questions and I'd ask questions. And then all of a sudden it was like I would just get the devil card and it would just pull. And it's like, stop asking. Like, you can't figure this out logically. And I started to notice that
Mhm.
the answers that I was getting were like, did not make sense. They were just out of left field. And it was trying to tell me, like, this is not how it works. Like, you have to have a respectful relationship between your own truth and the tools that are given. And so, how have you found that journey within yourself?
I think it's a rite of passage. Everybody goes through that moment where you might lean in a little too much and you might be pulling every day and you want to know, you're excited, you're learning. And then it starts to become a crutch or it starts to become too much. And I always say you gotta have a moment where you put it down and you live life. I've even had that where people have come and been like, I want to know this, and that. And sometimes I'm like, you might just need to live this out the next 1 to 2 months and see how it goes. And then we actually can have a picture to work with of how this is playing out, the energy. So that's always something to recognize. There's times where it is legitimate to be like, okay, this is a good moment to check in and let's see the energies at play. And then there's good moments to be like, you know what? I'm going to let that rest and I'm going to live life and see what just comes up in this moment. And until I really feel the need to check in, then I'm going to keep going my way. And one of the ways that I really love using the tarot specifically is at the top of every astrological season, I'll just pull 3, maybe 4 cards and just ask my higher self, my higher wisdom, hey, like what is it that I should be focused on? What can I lean into that's going to be helpful for me for this astrological season? And usually it'll give me that imagery and that understanding of, oh, okay, this is coming up. I'm going to lean in here. Like for this last Capricorn season, I saw one of the cards that came up for me was getting back into the gym and movement, and that I was really needing to lift weights again. And I felt that in my body. It's very simple. And that's the other thing, too, is sometimes people are coming in and they're looking for profound guidance, and there's moments for that. But a lot of times it's very simple guidance. You might just need 1 to 2 things, and that's enough to work on at that moment. And then you can come back for more.
Yeah, I think, being like the Gemini sun wanting to know, like I'm so intellectual and I'm so curious that I just like want to know and know and know. And so it's like that one simple answer. Oftentimes in my life like isn't enough. Like I want to know the specifics. I want to like know like all the details around it and like, are you sure this card is coming up like in a positive way, or is it trying to show me something? You know, and it's like so easy to overthink it, but I love the way in which people who are really have a deep relationship with it and are trained to kind of work with it, how they can interpret it in such an intuitive way and say, I'm feeling that like this is what is being presented. How do you want to work with it? And
Mhm.
there's this back and forth of like you're providing me what is being shown and then I get to work with it in a way where it's like I don't have to overthink it. I can just let it land, let it settle, and then know that like okay, I don't have to figure out all the answers on my own. This is just a way in which like it's being presented so that I can utilize it. But I think when I'm working with it on my own, I'm so much more likely to just like try to mess it up, you know? And so
Yes.
when you gave me that first session where you looped in the tarot and human design and astrology, it was like such a pivotal moment in my life right before I moved to Mexico. And so many of the things that we talked about that came up, like I had on my radar for the next year. And I was like,
Mhm.
boom, like that got checked off and that got checked off. And I was like, it was so cool to be able to kind of use it in those times when there's deep change on the rise or when you need a little bit more clarity. And I think, all the systems are great, but specifically astrology has been really cool to learn and understand how it's affected me in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to speak to your point, I wanted to go back and touch on what you said about you always were trying to find that highest path at that moment and make the best choice. And I find that, yes, that is an amazing prayer and intention. But what's come up for me, and I know that you and I both are in our Saturn return, which, if you're listening and you don't know what the Saturn return is, it's a very pivotal time in your late 20s and then again in your late 50s, where Saturn comes back to the place in your birth chart where it was when you were born. And it's a time of deep maturation, course correction, discipline, commitment, restriction, contraction. It is a time of pressure because you are leaving behind the childhood and you really are stepping into your full adulthood. And so during this time, I have found that I have had to look at my own ways that I use divination as well to be like, let me make the best choice always. And sometimes life is not about that. Sometimes you have to make a mistake. You are going to make that mistake. You are intended to make a mistake. And by making the mistake, you're going to learn from it. And it's really your ego, a lot of times, that thinks it's a mistake. But on a soul level, you're actually in an orbit of an experience of an energetic pattern so that you can learn and that you can grow from it. So how are you going to grow without the friction? How are you going to grow without coming to a dead end from time to time and going, look, this didn't work out? And so my Saturn return has really forced me to look at the ways that I have made mistakes or continue to make mistakes during this time and realize and reckon with how I've equated a lot of shame and failure to making mistakes. But then looping in the human design, I know that my profile is a 1-3. I'm an investigator martyr. And that profile is literally about making mistakes. Like we are the ones that go and do trial and error. And we have to go and live the experience. And then we talk about the experience and be like, this was an epic failure. This was an amazing adventure. This was a great victory. And so this has really been a time of realizing, oh yeah, there's going to be times where there's no amount of divination that's going to help you avoid a mistake or a failure or something that cost you because it's part of your soul path to learn from.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how many other people needed that, but I think for me, it's like I forget one, how similar we are because I'm also the 1-3, but two, like,
We
yeah,
are Sam squared.
we are Sam squared. And it's just so funny to really think, oh. okay, it's not about doing it right all the time. And I think that's one of the major things that's been coming up for me is like this kind of conditioning around what right or wrong actually is. And like you said, being afraid to make mistakes and being able to just live life and let it all come at you and say, okay, cool, now I can learn and grow. And our mutual friend Adam, like he's been my best friend for so long, and he's just like the one person who's always completely inspired me to just not care, like in a healthy way. It's like I don't care what other people think. I don't care about making mistakes. I'm just gonna go for it, full steam ahead, and just let whatever happens, and I'll just move on from there. And I think it's just such a beautiful reminder to say, okay, it's not all going to go right, and yet it is. And so
Exactly.
it's like so funny to think about, our Saturn returns happening, us reuniting now. And I know that this is really just the beginning. And one of the things that you keep mentioning cycles, and I've been tuning into like numerology a little bit and knowing that we just completed a 9-year cycle, and different traditions say different things. And I was listening to this guy that was talking about tantric numerology and coming at it from more of like a Kabbalistic way as well. And he talks about how we're in the 10-year. A lot of people say it's the 1 year, but either way, it's a new beginning and a completion at the same time. And 9 years ago, or the start of this 9-year cycle that we just completed was 2016 when we met.
Mm-hmm.
And, so much unearthed for me that year. Like that was the year that I decided to move away from home, go out on my own and like, ride the bull with no, like nothing to like grab me. There was no parents, there was no nothing. I just was like, I'm out here doing it. And, I that was right when we met. It was like just after that we met, and, our experiences together at, like in the bottle and music festivals, going around, introducing ourselves at Sam Squared, meeting these amazing people. Like, I don't know, there was so much that came out for me then. And I look at it in this way of like, I was experimenting with life and life was experimenting with me, and it was so
Oof.
healthy. Like,
I love that.
yeah,
Life was experimenting with me.
it was that time where I realized I can create my own reality. Like that's really what it was. And I think I don't know about you, I would love to hear your experience on this, but I got to figure out one, what I was made of, but really like I played around with both experience and the magic of people and going out and having all of that, but I never quite got to the point where I was going to insert myself into it. And I think now coming out of this cycle, now I'm ready to like insert myself and say, oh, I can be a part of this too in a really amazing, helpful way that impacts people. And like, I don't know, what was your kind of experience with that?
Yeah, I think part of that too is we were young. We were in our early 20s. And I think that's a time of life where you're receiving quite a lot. And as you get older, you can start to be that in that position where you're giving back. But we were like sponges. We were soaking up our environment. We were soaking up these experiences. And we needed to fill that cup in order to come to this place where we are now, where the Saturn return is really maturing us. But 2016 was pivotal, and it's really quite funny and coincidental that it's trending right now so heavily on social media and in the zeitgeist, because there are some astrological correlations. We are in the same nodal cycle as that time. So the nodes are back in
Mm.
Pisces and Virgo, which they were as well at that time. And it was a pivotal year. I know as well, we were in our last Saturn square before the Saturn return. So that happens around age 21 to 22. It is also a time of maturation and a little bit of a time of crisis of like, who are we and what do we do? And that time for me was actually quite a challenging year in many ways and very transformative and opening to what I do now, what I share now. I was acting at the time and I had a very successful 2015. I had gotten on my first national television show and I thought like that's it. My career is going to take off from here. I got on my first guest star, let's go. And it didn't exactly happen like that. And then quietly, here comes in these transformational festivals that really blew open the doors of perception, if you will, for me, for you, going to lightning in a bottle, going to symbiosis, and experiencing a culture and a place where people were hugging and smiling and dancing and so open. There was so much open heartedness going on within those communities at that time. And it wasn't something I had necessarily experienced up until then in that way. And so I very much leaned into like, what is this? What's happening here? And being on that edge of community and yoga and mindfulness and the fire and the elements and coming together to dance, but also coming together to pray, also coming together to engage in ritual, to engage in listening to other community members who were sharing about permaculture or cooking or spirituality. So it really was a defining time of opening up the aperture to this space, and to that journey of self-realization. The final thing for me that was very impactful for 2016, was the fact that I witnessed the death of my aunt. And I was there in the room with her when she was actively dying. And that was the first time that that had happened, where I was really, really witness to it. My Oma, my grandmother, I was close, but I really feel like my aunt Jeanette gave me a gift that year, with that experience, as your loved ones do when they share their process of dying and death in front of you. And her experience of not really getting to live her retirement, it sat with me heavily. And I realized that we're not promised tomorrow, and that I wanted to do things that I didn't want to put off until retirement, that I wanted to live a really full life in all the stages of my life and not put something off and wait for something on a day that's not promised. So it was quite the year, Sam. It was quite the year.
Yeah, I mean, wow. I know I had like that year for me was equally as incredible as it was like, oh, okay, there was there was a lot of transformation, like you said. I think it was on both sides of the spectrum. But having that moment for you when you were with your aunt and really kind of sitting on that line between life and death and saying like, what has she been able to make of her life? What am I going to be able to make? Like, I don't, I haven't really experienced too many deaths that were super close to me, so I can't share on that. But I just, I can imagine how impactful it would be going forward, especially when you're younger 20s, being like, whoa, okay, this is getting real, and
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be real in a negative way. It's actually a beautiful reminder to say, what do I want my life to be about? And what did you obviously this has been an unfolding process since then, but did you have an idea from when that started to now of like pointing yourself in a certain direction or having a goal or saying this is who I'm going to be, or it just hasn't been kind of on the rocket ship ride for wherever it's going to go?
Well, it definitely has that 1-3 profile line of a lot of trial and error and exploration. I do think that that was a turning point for me because I was still continuing to audition. I still was in the space with a manager and agents and going to acting classes. But then I started to really open up to studying and continuing on the path with yoga, with astrology, with divination, continuing to go to festivals like Lightning in a Bottle, transformational spaces, community spaces as well. And in some ways, when I look back on it, it's like I wanted to do this one thing, which was be an actor and be a storyteller and a performer. And then this other thing just kind of snuck up on me. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's my like little passion thing. Like, that's my little hobby thing. And then all of a sudden, there was a point in 2018 when Uranus moved into Taurus, May of 2018, that I think it started to become clear to me like, oh, this is a main thing for you. This is going to be a main part of your life. And I started to embrace that more. I also think I had a lot of fear because my acting type was very clean girl, collegiate, post grad. And there was an aspect of me that was scared that in the industry or with casting, that if they knew I'm secretly a witch, I'm secretly a ritual ceremonialist, magic woman who sits under the moon, that like this is going to ruin my acting persona, which I get it. When you're younger, like those things come up, and now I'm like, that's so silly.
Aren't most people in LA like actually that way?
Exactly. I like, but in my mind, I'm like, this is gonna be the end. And what's funny about that is I actually began to give readings to other actors and people within the industry, and then that opened doors to start reading for executives in different places in production and production companies and development. I was able to actually get an agent in Atlanta via a tarot reading I did for one of her clients. So then I'm like, is this my entry into the business through this door? Like, this is so funny. And that very much has continued to always stay with me, because one of the big lessons I felt of my 20s is I was so focused on like, this is the only way I want to have success. I want to have success as an actor and nothing else. And I've had to really open that aperture and go, success comes in a lot of ways. And you never know how doing this job or meeting this person or going this place that is actually feels very left field to what you think you're doing, loops you all the way back around and shoots you forward. So again, going back to like, it's not a line, it's a spiral and it's a cycle. And I've opened myself up greatly, I would say, especially since 2020, 2021, to redefining that success can come in all forms, fashions, events, people, experiences in life if you're open to it.
Mhm. And such a beautiful example of the 1-3 playing out, right? You're like learning to become an actress. You're like doing all these things. You're learning how to like act and I don't know, all the things that come with that, right? And you're just like, this is going to be the thing. You go with the 3, you go experiment on it, and you say, okay, cool, and you get that full rich experience with which led you to California, right? And
Mm-hmm.
just by you being in the right place at the right time, doing the thing that you were pursuing, like led you on to a complete other trajectory. And it's just, again, that concept of surrender versus free will. Like, who's playing the who all what are the things that are at play here, and like how am I listening and how am I just rolling with the punches? Like, yeah.
Absolutely. It has to be a a balance between the flow and between your will to take action and initiate things.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've been sitting and wrestling with lately is that, if you go out in public and you're talking to people, at least for me, it's constantly people, both in the collective and in their own life, they are wrestling with these changes that are happening. And we're on this thing that we have called time, right? And
Mm-hmm.
everyone in this space says time is an illusion, it doesn't matter, blah, blah, blah. All we have is now, which is, yes, important. And also, it's like time is moving forward, the cosmos are moving, all these things are at play. And I think people are really wrestling with all of the small little changes that happen. And it's like, the question that is kind of like always comes up is, are we going to be okay? How is this going to affect us? Oh, this is changing, that's changed. Oh, so and so did this and that happened. And and it's constant. It's like us trying to kind of sit with the energy of things are never going to be the same from this moment on. Every single moment we have is a moment that we're further into the future. And I think it is a hard pill to swallow, and it opens up this like real magic of the uncertainty and the unknown. And so it's just, I don't know where I wanted to go with this, but I think looking forward, as I've been doing with the astrology that's going to be playing out this year, we have this huge potential for some rapid changes. And time is moving so much quicker now, at least it feels like, than it has in the past. And so it's wrestling with, okay, how is this going to impact me personally? And how is it going to affect the world around me? And you're like, are those two things even different? And you know, I mean, it's like, how much am I going to be expand or going to be able to expand in my personal life when there's all these things happening in the world? And some, it's so easy to get really caught in it. But I mean, what have you noticed within your clients and within your own life of like, oh, this may or this thing is happening, whether we like it or not, but we don't really know what that is. And then looking at more of in a personal way of like, yeah, but it's also going to play out in this way in your life, and it might look completely different, but it's also correlated.
Yes. So there is a lot of uncertainty right now, and we are feeling that because of a lot of planetary shifts that are going on at this time, where we're ending eras that started in 2011, that started in 2018, that started in 2023. And so this feeling of, okay, where are we going and what's the trajectory? There's a sense of fog, there's a sense of confusion because we have that planet Saturn that is about our tangible reality, right? Its structure, its form, its time, it's the boundaries. And right now, it's been in a conjunction this whole past year. We're actually going to peak with the conjunction February 20th with Neptune. And Neptune is the planet of fog and mist and dissolving and illusion. And so you have our planet of form that is being really swirled around, if you will, with Neptune and Pisces, right? They're in the sign of the ocean. It's hard to put boundaries around the ocean, the deep waters. And so it's feeling like a liminal space right now as we are in the collective, because I also think we're at the dawning of artificial intelligence in the same way that we were at a critical point at the turn of the industrial revolution. We're at that same crux point. So it's hard to make predictions in some ways of how this is all going to unfold, because we're all entering into very, very new territory. And the best thing that I can say is that in some ways you have to, and it's our duty and responsibility to be informed about our world and history. The more we can be informed about history, the more that we can, again, consciously co-create with the experience, because history doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme. And that's the same with the astrology. That's the same concept, if you will. So if we think about it, and something that I always ponder is, okay, what if we are, yes, experiencing Pluto and Aquarius again right now? And the last time that happened was the French Revolution, the American Revolution, the Haitian Revolution. It's a very revolutionary time. But we have about 250 years of advancement in human consciousness and human potential and human study. So, how can we meet this same energetic archetype at this moment, bringing more consciousness? Because again, that's the difference between what we think is, oh, this is happening to me and it's fate, versus, okay, I'm aware of this. Oh, I can catch myself in a pattern and I can do something different. And of course, in some ways, that's easier, obviously, to do on a personal level in your own life. How do we do that as a humanity, as a collective, where we all can be in a group going, oh, this pattern's coming up. Let's pause. Let's take a breath. Let's think about this. How can we do this differently? And so, with this moment of meeting a deep sense of uncertainty, I think part of the process of working with divination can be helpful, but then also the process of nervous system regulation, of tending to the body, of tending to nourishment with food, getting back to the basics, sleep, so that we can meet the present moment as it's coming forward. And as well, tending to your community and to your local space. I think that's also been a lesson of Saturn and Pisces at this time, which is there's so much ongoing suffering and grief and injustice in the world, but there's also a need for understanding what structures and forms can you work with on a ground level, whether that's joining a grassroots organization in your local city and your local space, whether that's if you're somebody who feels a deep call to a different country and you have a passion project to go to Guatemala and to build houses for the community and to help bring stoves and electricity into homes so that they're not contacting a wooden stove where the fire is causing all sorts of health problems, and you're helping to bring clean water, then if you that's your passion, that's your space, go towards that. And I think that's part of knowing yourself deeply, to understand, knowing where you serve the best and with the most effect that you can, and then having to go, you know what, I know also I'm not going to solve all the problems.
Yeah, it's just I think that's where astrology has really helped me in my own life. And I'd love to hear you talk about like how we can work with our own charts and then at the same time understand what's coming at us in the current moment. Because in my experience, the only thing that you can do, and there's so much playing out in the collective, right? But if you don't have a stable ground, a stable foundation within yourself, then that's all just gonna be like, I don't know, it's gonna affect you so much more. And then you're not really doing anything to help. But if we can come back and truly know ourselves, know what our mission is, and know how we can reflect upon how we can change and grow, then we have much more tools than we actually think to shape this, this world that's coming, that's changing, and shape it for the better. And so, when you work with people, what is generally the way in which people can start to know like what's currently happening in play? How am I as a human, and like what can I do to leverage this moment and at the same time recognize this is outside of my realm. Like I like to focus on what we can do. What are our resources? Like you said, eating better, sleeping better, all the things that we have in our grasp, like focusing on those resources. And I think you just, you know, frame that in a beautiful way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, health is everything. Health is the foundation to everything that we do. If we don't have a healthy body and a healthy mind, it is going to ripple out into all areas of our life. So getting right with that is really important. And then that's also understanding your own constitution. We all have different needs and different things that the body is going to want in terms of nourishment. But in terms of getting to know yourself deeper, it's all about starting with something like knowing your foundation of your natal chart and understanding your natal chart, to then layer in like the current transits. So that's where, when we're meeting, and it's very much like a therapeutic conversation in ways, we're having a conversation where I'm sharing the transits. I might ask, have you felt this come up? Or maybe I'll share some dates. Did anything happen? And we can talk about it. We can find the deeper understanding, the meaning coming through, the threads. And then I can also share like, hey, this is a time you're going to be really leaning into working with groups, organizations. You're going to be really out in the world, like your work. This is an opportunity for your work to move forward, for you to gain recognition. If you've been putting in the time and the energy and the hours, opportunities could open up. But then here, this area of life, and that could be maybe, romantic relationships or dating, it's going through a little bit of a contraction. There's a little bit of a delay here where things might feel a little bit more serious and not as light. So there's a way of, again, coming back to this word equanimity, which is about having the ability to ride the highs of life with a sense of inner peace, and then also riding the lows of life with a sense of inner peace and understanding, so that you're not also shooting up and then crashing out, and understanding those cycles and going, okay, this is where I can lean in this year. This is really coming forward for me. So I'm going to put a lot of my focus and my effort and attention here. And then maybe halfway through the year, there's a shift and I might start to lean into this space. Because why would you lean in to a space where maybe like it's just not the time yet for something to unfold there? So you're kind of like knocking at a door that doesn't want to open yet. And astrology can really help us to see like, oh, at this time, like that door, that opportunity is going to start opening. And that's when you're going to be ready and primed to walk through that door.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's just so cool to be able to look at it that way because it's like cosmic timing, right? I think sometimes we receive this downloads, if you will, or this inspiration to do something or to want something. It's that deep desire that we know is not just like this fleeting moment of pleasure. It's like, oh, I actually really think this could be great for my life. But then knowing like okay, maybe it doesn't need to happen right in this moment. Maybe that this is just a seed planted for a little bit later, and I'm going to continue doing the things and working with the current energies at play. And then when that moment comes, I'm going to go full force into it and create something really cool. And are there when you have clients, are there people that come to you with specific issues, or do they just want to know what's going on in their life right now? Or is it more like kind of future planning of what might be going on in the next year to come?
Oh, all sorts of things. I have people that come and yes, it's definitely future planning. Maybe they're very organized. They want dates like, oh, these are more auspicious dates to work with. These are dates maybe to avoid planning big things you want to go well. And then there can be crisis. And that's where I really love meeting people at thresholds. And I think that also lends itself to my name, Hands of Mercury, and Mercury being the psychopomp. It's the god Hermes that could move between the three worlds, could move up to Mount Olympus, the place of the gods, our world, the middle world, and then could go down to Hades, the underworld. And so when we think about that, that's the traveler, right? And we are at crossroads at different points of our lives. And sometimes we need to meet someone with a lantern on the road that tells you, like, keep going that way or like go this way. And so that's where meeting at those thresholds can be really important and potent and impactful. Like I love reading for people, especially who are starting their Saturn return or maybe ending their Saturn return, because that's such a threshold moment of our life. We're being initiated into something deeper. And so even with those readings, it's like we could talk for an hour or 2 hours, but there's like 1 to 2 things that those are the things that needed to come through so much. And sometimes I'll get a call, 2 years later and be like, you said this one thing in that reading, and that changed everything for me. And that just grounded me and anchored me into what I just experienced. And that's what it's all about. And so we can really dive in and go deep into a crisis or a threshold or initiation. Or we can have more of a general, like you're coming in, you just want to kind of see your timing. Maybe you run a business, want to launch something, an event, a product. I can also help with that. And we can see best dates to work with and such.
Mm. Yeah, I'm like picturing a marathon runner, right? And there's like checkpoints where that friend like hands them a water bottle and says like, you got this, kind of helps them just kind of refresh a little bit. And then they go on their way. But like without that, they probably wouldn't be able to make it the next 5 to 10 miles or whatever. And
Exactly. I love being that person. I'll come in and be, your personal cheerleader. But also I won't sugarcoat it either. Sometimes I have to be that one to be like, hey, this isn't something that's going to end in 1 to 2 months. This is kind of a year-long transit. So take that, acknowledge it, integrate it, and try to accept that part of this friction of this moment. Sometimes we need that longevity, the consistency of friction. It teaches us in a different way than a shocking one hit, ouch, and then we move on. And that's also kind of the archetypal difference between Mars and Saturn. Mars can
yeah.
kind of come in and give you this fiery kick, but then Saturn is like, we're really going to push you through the time, the energy, the hours, the pain, the delay, so that you can climb up that mountain.
Do you mind going through some of the other planets too, so we can kind of understand the energies of them?
Of course. So we have the 7 traditional planets of astrology. And then obviously, as we invented the telescope, we have the transpersonal planets, so the outer planets that lend themselves more to generational cycles, but I also find them to be very impactful in our personal charts. So we have the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and Saturn is the boundary that we can see with the naked eye. So that's our 7 traditional planets. And then we have Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Great book I can recommend as well if you're interested in those transpersonal outer planets would be Cosmos and Psyche by Richard Tarnas. And he talks a lot about the historical happenings and events when those planets are in relation to each other. So Saturn and Pluto, or Saturn and Neptune, Uranus and Pluto. And so in traditional astrology, the personal planets are going to be sun, moon through Mars. So the sun being the luminary, the consciousness, the self, the way that we shine. There's a sense of expression with the sun. The moon is related to our emotions and the body. So we can think about the moon being like the flesh and the body in which the spirit of the sun or the consciousness kind of inhabits. And also traditionally, there was that masculine feminine duality that we saw. So that more masculine principle being connected to the sun and the solar force, and the moon being connected to the feminine force. And these are just very much the basics that we're covering.
Yeah.
Mercury, we have our planet of communication. It's our planet of mental processing. It's our planet of ideas, of thoughts. Mercury is kind of interesting because in traditional astrology, it's neutral. And the way that Mercury can act, whether it acts in a more noble and good and moral way, if it's connected to maybe Venus or Jupiter, it leans that way. But Mercury can be mischievous, a trickster, a little bit of a manipulator. It can be a thief. And if it leans into Mars, Saturn, Pluto. So it speaks to the mutability of Mercury, which we find with the signs of Virgo and Gemini that it occupies. And then we have the moon as well. And the moon also has this kind of changing quality. If we think about it, it's the fastest moving object in our sky because it makes a full revolution every 28 days. It goes through all of the signs. And so we have next Venus, planet of love, beauty, aesthetics, justice, advocacy. Venus also very much is connected to war, not just in the Greco-Roman tradition of astrology, but the Mayans as well. So I very much like to put in the fact that not just Mars is a planet of war, Venus is also a planet of war. It's just they go about war in two different ways if we think about it. Mars is just the brute force and the violence and the strength that we associate with war in the military, whereas Venus is like the diplomat and the judge and the one who maybe pulls the strings behind the scenes with handshakes and with sensuality. So those are the two ways we can see them. There are relational planets. So yes, Mars is a fiery planet, helps us to take action. It helps us with our will, our force. It's also connected to our vitality in life. And also how we manage and approach conflict. A lot of times we see with Mars. Jupiter is connected to Zeus. It's our planet of benevolence, of gifts, blessings, faith, but really it's a planet of expansion. And it can expand both the good and it can expand the bad. So whatever it touches, it's an expander. That's the way we can think about Jupiter. Whereas its antithesis in some ways is Saturn, because Saturn is a contractor. It is the planet of restriction, boundary, form. It's the planet of aging and mortality. And so Saturn is a taskmaster. Saturn is going to put us through our paces, and Saturn is also just connected to loss as well. When we get outside those to the transpersonal, Uranus is the liberator, the genius, connects us to the Promethean archetype. So the one who goes up and steals fire from the gods to bring it down to the humans. It has that rebellious energy. It's that energy of bringing power to the people from the ones in power. And it also has a connection to Aquarius and the Aquarian energy. Our planet Neptune is the planet of dreams, illusion, spirituality. It's a planet of non-ordinary consciousness. So this is connected as well. If we think about when we go to a really amazing festival and they've created a whole world, or a movie like Avatar or Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter, that has a very Neptunian energy or quality to it because it's this whole fantasy world that's not real, but in some ways it almost does feel real, and it does teach us something about our humanity. It's that planet of compassion and empathy as well as the planet of deception and illusion. And finally, we have Pluto, which is connected to Hades and the underworld. It's a planet of death and rebirth and transformation, of power and authenticity. Pluto is a planet of manipulation and seduction. So I don't think that's always necessarily a bad thing. I always talk about how we could use manipulation for the good of the world. And I think people can do that all the time. But Pluto is very connected to our sense of power in this life and regeneration. And like all the planets, there is good qualities, if you will. There's their qualities of light, and then there's their shadow qualities. And we see that as well reflected in our own birth charts or the birth charts of other things, where we can lean into the light of that archetype and that quality, or we might lean at times into the shadow.
Mm. Yeah, and I think it's like Pluto, for example, is such a great example of like for me personally, Pluto's in Aquarius right now, and Aquarius is in my fifth house. So it's like all creativity. And I think like you could consider, oh, Pluto's is like this underworld, this like really dark planet, blah, blah, blah. But when it's in that house, I mean, you could probably say a lot better than I could, but it's like really me getting to the depths of my creativity and kind of, especially with the Aquarius flavor, it's like going against the grain, doing something different, doing something really meaningful that might kind of make waves in the traditional paradigm, right? Is that, I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly, but
Yes. Trust yourself. You can also
yeah,
explain that. You're feeling into your own
yeah.
experience too of how Pluto's starting to maybe affect you psychologically. It's that energy that kind of comes up from the underground, right? And it kind of rises up, and you're like, It's also subtle. If we think about it, Pluto being the farthest planet away from us, it's subtle and it's powerful. But
Mm,
yes, it's very much that going to the depths. And sometimes Pluto and malefic planets can get a bad rep, obviously, because they can bring challenge to our lives in many ways. But Pluto is also about getting us in touch with the soul. There's a lot to do with Pluto about attachment to life. And when we have a deep, deep, deep desire for something to happen, and what happens when we don't get what we want, and
mm,
that feeling of, I'm going to die if this doesn't happen the way I want it to. But then you don't physically die. But metaphorically and psychologically, you're probably going to go through a death of some sort from that experience of losing something that you maybe wanted the most in life. And so that's some of the ways that Pluto can come in and transform us. It's an initiation, and especially I would say every woman is connected in many ways to Pluto and that archetype through the myth of Persephone and being taken to the underworld and being initiated from her maiden innocent form to becoming a queen and becoming a woman. And when a woman is initiated by birth, in the same way, when she's giving birth, that is also a death portal for a woman in her life before that. So Pluto is, it can be feared, but I think there's a lot of beauty that comes from Pluto and Pluto transits as well.
yeah, I think it goes back to what we said before about, moving from feeling like a victim to like actually understanding your chart and what's playing out. And like my Pluto's in Scorpio. And so it's like both of the, I think maybe Scorpio is the ruler of Pluto, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So either it's like kind of these two energies of death and rebirth. And on one hand, you could be like, why is everything so extreme and intense in my life? And on the other hand, you're like, yeah, but you wouldn't have had all those other experiences had you not gone through that. And I think, again, having those resources and those tools to, like you said, open the aperture, I think it's such a beautiful metaphor to say, wow, okay, this might be a little rocky. It might be tough, but it's going to be worth it on the end because I'm going to come out a completely more open and alive human and then, be able to share that with the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for me, and I would love to hear your take on this, but when people are starting to get to know astrology and get to know their chart, like I started with, of course, go looking at my natal chart, feeling so validated about like, wow, I'm completely like this, and this is crazy to like have it so nailed on the head. And then now shifting into the more specifics of my chart, um, and then understanding, okay, which house is being affected by what. And I think that has been the most impactful way for me to learn and interact with my life. But I don't know that I would have been able to have that true context without knowing some of the other aspects of my natal chart. Like, where do you direct people to kind of begin?
Yes. So understanding your natal chart, getting it read by an astrologer is very helpful because it gives you a real grounding and basis to start from. As well, I always say you're going to want to look to where your chart ruler is. So the planet that rules wherever your ascendant lands. So if your ascendant is in Virgo, your chart ruler is going to be Mercury. If your ascendant is in Scorpio, your chart ruler is going to be Mars. And that planet is very important to you. It's like a guardian planet of your life in some ways. It's like an ambassador of your life. So where the house that that's in is going to be a main house that you're working with in the lifetime. And as well, anything that transits over that planet is going to be important, or you're going to feel that in a more personal way. The second is looking obviously at the luminaries. And, we go back to obviously astrology in the magazines, pop psychology. It's like the sun sign, the sun sign. And the luminaries are important. But another way of looking at it is, were you born during the day or during the night? And if you were born at night, the moon is going to take some more precedence in your chart as well. So looking at what time of day were you born in, whatever luminary was out at that time that was in its strength, that also is going to be an important area of your life where you're going to have a focus and a connection. There's going to be themes that continue to come up from that space. If you are wanting to read your horoscope, my pro tip always is you're going to want to read from your rising sign. So whenever you see something in a magazine or on an astrologer's website or a Substack, if they are doing horoscopes for the week or the month, always check in first with your rising sign, because that's going to be the most accurate to what's happening in terms of houses, especially if we think about using like the whole sign house system, where the whole house from 0 to 30 degrees, they're talking about what's going on. If like Uranus is moving into Gemini, that's moving into this house for you. So those are some of the ways that you can start just with those things and just with those places, and you're going to get a lot out of understanding yourself and then looking at what's transiting. The final thing is the most active areas of your chart when transits are happening is your cross of life. So that's the first house of self and identity, the fourth house of roots and family and where you come from, the seventh house of your major partnerships in life, business partnerships, marriage, relationships, so who you're with, and then your career direction, your legacy, your vocation, what you're known for in the world, which is your 10th house.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. You're the second person to say that or bring that to my attention, that last part about that cross, and I never thought about it that way. And my cat is also here agreeing with us, so if you hear that. But yeah, it's just I'm learning so much and it's making me inspired to start having a reading with you. Well, actually, but before we kind of start to wrap this up a little bit, I would love to hear about kind of what's lighting you up for this year and where do you see yourself going? And are you able to plan like what's happening in your life based on the tools that you have for this current year?
Yes. So I'm feeling lit up mostly by the fact that Saturn return is ending. I am
Yes.
going to be February 13th. I will be out in the streets. I will be out that night. I will be celebrating. And I hope that anybody here who was born with Saturn and Pisces natally will also be celebrating out that night, because we deserve to. And so, with that, I can feel some of the contraction and delays and restrictions on my life starting to lift up. And that feels incredibly liberating. I am being lit up by the fact that Uranus is going into my 10th house. I feel a lot of career movement coming forward, because not only am I having Uranus starting to move into that house of career, honors, awards, achievements, the nodes and the eclipses are starting to impact my 6th house of day to day work. And so I'm really feeling like a lean into those spaces for myself for this year and starting to feel that synchronicity and flow coming back in. I will say though, I'm still feeling a bit of a liminal space with some things happening, and I've seen that with my clients as well. It is coming. We are going to get that action movement forward, and I think that will be mid February to mid March. We'll start to have those moments kind of finally kicking in, and we can start to make some real concrete plans. Cause I will say I'm also still kind of in that waiting room, but I have like 1 to 2 things where I'm like, okay, yes, I know I'm working on that and I'm going to move that forward.
Mm. Yeah, it's again, it's like this curious place of like, oh, I'm so happy that some of this is starting to shift and you're like seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And yet I feel like there's an immense push right now, especially for us to like wrap up everything that is about to end, really see if we can embody these lessons and kind of clear out a little bit of the remaining remnants of Saturn and Neptune and all these different energies that are at play, and then saying, okay, cool, this is where I see myself going, and I'm going to leave it up to the creator to decide from there and just continue to listen. But yeah, so fun, so inspiring.
That's another part that is coming full circle, especially with this Uranus transit. Is this past year I had an idea for a script drop in, and I haven't written a script in a long time actually. But I did go to school for film and TV, and obviously I lived in LA and was in all sorts of classes and tried my hand at writing things, and it was really beautiful to have this drop in because it was a script idea that can only come from the specific and unique life experience that I've lived during the Saturn return. And I'm like, oh, this is my story to tell. And I've been waiting for a story of depth and richness and nuance like this to drop in for a long time, I think. And funny enough, acting and performance and filmmaking has swirled back into my life in a very strong way in the past 6 months. And I'm surprised and I'm like, I'm very curious because I think as well, there was part of me that felt like when I left LA, I'm like, is this over? All this training, all this stuff, did I do it for nothing? And you just never know how something wraps back around and comes back into a full circle. So that's another part that I'm excited with Uranus and Gemini. It's coming into that area where I have Mercury and Venus and Gemini. And I'm feeling a call to writing, and I'm feeling a call to write this script this year.
Mm. So cool. I'm excited to see how it turns out and to be able to again use those tools and those resources that you thought you may have been done with and be like, oh no, I'm still me. Like this is one big collective that I can just pull upon when I need it. And so yeah, we'll be sure to keep a lookout on all of the offerings and the things that you have coming in the future. And for as far as current offerings and what you do right now, where can people find you? What is the best way to work with you? And yeah, all the things, let us know.
So you can follow along on Instagram and Threads at Hands of Mercury. I'm also on TikTok. I usually like to post funny, silly things on TikTok. If you're into that as well, I have an email newsletter where I like to do write ups about current transits or the full or new moons. And I also offer some kind of exclusive discounts or first discounts before they go out to the public on social media. So definitely you can sign up for that on my Instagram, on the link tree, or on my website. And right now, I am offering my 2026 year ahead readings. So, this is really my favorite time of year because it's a very in depth reading. We go month by month. It's combining astrology, it's combining tarot, it's combining intuition. So it's a holistic dive into your year. I also have a smaller express reading for those that might just want to taste and dip their toe, get the main bullet points for their year. And also, I offer a variety of astrological consultations. So if you are in a relationship and you want to understand your relationship, we have amazing tools called synastry and composite charts and even progressions, where we can look at the timing of the relationship. We can look at the nature of the relationship itself, and we can look at the strengths and the challenges that each of you bring from your natal charts into the relationship. I also offer one of my favorites is the astrocartography session. So your natal chart can also get cast upon the world map, and you have personal ley lines, planetary lines of power all around the world. And if you're somebody who loves to travel, or you're a digital nomad, or just want to go check out a new place, maybe you're feeling a call to move, these are great consultations to have, because you can actually move to a place of power, to a place of more ease, to a place that might be really fortuitous for your career or fortuitous for finding a partner or relationship by looking at this map. So that's one of my favorites as well that I like to share. I also offer ceremonies that incorporate cacao, as I have studied under teachers in Guatemala, working with ish cacao, the medicine of this beautiful plant that we know as chocolate, and is a sacred food, it's a sacred medicine. And as well, I offer Reiki, and I have a monthly Reiki practice group that I co lead with my teacher that I got my first Reiki attunement with in 2018. So if you are attuned and you want to have a space to collaborate, to connect, to practice your Reiki in a container that is informed by consent, is informed by tradition, and also a more ecosomatic approach too of our connection to the earth, I offer that as well. You can find that on my website, handsofmercury.com.
So cool. I feel like there's probably 15 more things that we could talk about on our next podcast now that I understand a little bit more, but I'm really curious about the Reiki offering that you have, and just so many other things we could dive into. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your light and giving us just like a little tidbit of, your work and your life and how all of this has come full circle. And I just want to say before we close, like I love this way in which you use everything. Like it's not just one thing, like it's like all of these things that we have, we can call upon it. I think this has kind of been the overarching theme of the podcast, but like if anyone's listening, the reading and the session that I had with you, Sam, like years ago, still was so impactful. And as I've come into who I am, it's like it's informed me, and I know that like we have to live a holistic life. It's not one thing. It's not, it's not black or white, right or wrong, and it's not just like maybe if people find that one thing that is so beautiful that is for them, but for me, I really like to have everything within my scope of view, and be as informed as I can. So yeah, highly recommend a session with you, and I'm so looking forward to our next conversation.
Oh, thank you so much. And it was such a pleasure. And I think it speaks to our connection in the Gemini sphere as well. And like understanding that holistic integration of having tools, having these different multitudes and places and textures and forms that we want to lean into at times. And sometimes I need to dance, and sometimes I need to create a ritual, and sometimes I need to have a tarot session, and sometimes I need to go have a glass of wine with someone out, like it's all going to inform how to create the best experience, to find the meaning, to make the best choice in that moment. And I just want to say, I have so much love for you as Sam Squared, and our times together frolicking music festivals, and just the love that we share for music, the love that we share for living this human experience, and smiling and hugging and meeting people, and the curiosity that we share together. And so to be here a decade later with more maturity, more wisdom, more understanding of ourselves and each other, and to reconnect in this way, it just feels really meaningful and beautiful. And so I want to share my love for you, and thank you for having me on, and thank you for creating this podcast and this space. And I'm really proud of all the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It honestly, it means a lot, and there's so much that I could say, but I think I'm just going to close with Uranus is moving into my ninth house, which is, Gemini, my sun. And so I'm really looking forward to some travel. And so
Yeah.
soon enough, I see myself making my way back down to Mexico, and I would love to meet up and be able to do this thing in person. So,
Let's
um,
do it. We're planting the seed right here. We're going to do an in-person podcast experience in Mexico City.
oh, I love it. It's been calling me. So thank you so much, Sam. I will see you soon. And for everyone listening, I hope you got a lot out of this. And until next time. Hey guys, thank you so much for listening and for being a part of this episode. I really hope you got a lot out of it. I just want to say astrology has been something that I've been working with more and more in my life to understand all of the energies at play and the things that have been really impacting me in a positive way or in a maybe not so positive way. And it helps me really understand what is currently happening so that I can work with it in a more intentional way. And it's started to shift a lot of the ways in which I view myself and how I view the world, honestly. So thank you again. And if you resonate with this content, please leave a rating, leave a review, make a comment, send it to a friend. And if you can support a little bit deeper, please leave a donation. All the things really help for the word to get out there about the podcast, and it allows me to keep doing this and providing for you guys. And I really have some amazing conversations coming out, some more tools, some more tips and tricks, and just for more holistic wisdom for a beautiful life. So everything helps, and I just want to say thank you and have a great day. I will see you guys in the next episode.